an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering The Magicians, Season 3, Episode 11, 23. In this episode, the beast is back, baby! Well, kind of. Everything about this episode I found kind of confusing, but I rather liked it. I liked this return to a place we came from. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. This episode is sponsored by Ashely. Thank you very much, Ashely, for covering this one. I am really pleased at how quickly I have been able to watch episodes, although there is the drawback that I often don't get to watch them twice when they're close together. This episode I watched 1.5 times. I watched it once, and then last night I had a little bit of time, and so I put it on again in order to refresh myself on the first half and how everything went down, but I was not able to finish it. So there is so much going on here, and first of all, I would like to give the writers some props because they just had an episode in which it really feels like Josh is yet again going to be kind of an afterthought, where he's just hanging out in the background with Quentin and Alice in the foreground arguing and him just being the comic relief. And I rather like the fact that they were like, yeah, I know that we were kind of like doing this whole thing where everybody forgot about him. And it seems like we're falling right back into that. But I promise we have something in store for him. Now, whether or not he continues in this vein to be the kind of like character the others are remains to be seen. But I do appreciate him getting a little bit of time here to stretch and do something a bit different. He does, like, I think it makes a lot of sense for his character. He is not somebody who is super willing to be vulnerable. Like when he calls everybody out about the fact that they forgot about him, it's from a place of anger, which protects you a little bit from being too vulnerable. But I liked that this episode, he has the, I don't want to say camouflage or excuse, but a little bit. He has the fact of that he is talking to himself to give him the freedom to be a little bit more honest about everything. And to see the potential for the direction that he could go in. And while we don't know exactly how this is going to turn out, because they're bringing back around the fact that he has sexually transmitted werewolfism, lycanthropy, like he had kind of, it seems, forgotten that was a thing. And the reminder here may give him time to prepare for whatever is coming next. We shall see. So yeah, this episode, first of all, I want to mention that the title of this episode being 23, I'm covering Travelers, and my goodness, but I just fucking completely feel like this title is a Travelers episode title. It does not sound like a Magician's title. They always do something that's just like a little bit snarky or like focusing in on something that in order to just make the title a little bit comical. And this is just so straightforward that I kept forgetting the name of the episode. So we start off the episode with finding out that the kings and queens of Fillory all have a bounty on their heads that Flea, Tick. I call him Flea, like the drummer. His name is that Dick Tick Pickwick, as Margot says it, and I love it. I love it the most. Jesse says, I liked seeing Margot and Elliot back at Break Bills as ghosts and how their personalities reverted back to how they were in season 1. Agreed. Yeah, it was just a really... I am always a fan of reminders of what people were like. It doesn't have to be this overt either. We don't have to go all like and actually see them as a younger character. We could just have a flash of it, you know. I was just watching Vikings, for example, and in Vikings there's a lot of like rather large time jumps, and there is a point at which one of the main characters is, for the easiest way to say it, he's on drugs and hallucinating, and he looks over and sees the way that the bank of this river sits, and it reminds him of his home like 10 years ago. And he sees his wife come out with his children running around. And as viewers, his children are now adults. His wife and him have split up. But it is a really, despite the fact that there is no dialogue at all, he's just watching younger versions of these characters running around. You still get that, oh my God, wow, yeah, things have changed a lot, you know? And I think that that is a pretty neat tie-in with the fact that it's not just the like trauma that the two of them have gone through that changed them, but they also have relationships with other people that have like opened them up a bit. And you get to see just kind of how insulated they were in a way. And that's not to say that they're not still in some ways. I mean, most of the scenes that we get this season are Margot Elliott scenes, like in the past few episodes at least. The two of them tend to be the ones working together most of the time. But they have been sort of like forced to allow other people into their circle in a way that they probably wouldn't have thought they'd be excited about. And maybe they just weren't excited about it. And I think that helps with growth as well. You know, it's understandable to have a friend that you trust more than others or that you relate to more than others. But I think pushing your comfort level on that leads to growing as a person. So, all right, this bounty, they are both a little bit insulted by it. And they just think that it's not enough money to justify, you know, bringing them in. They think that they should be worth more. At this point, Quentin and Alice show up, and Alice is asking why Josh isn't listed. And Elliot says that's because Josh was really more like a substitute teacher. And I think that that seems fair, if a little harsh. He didn't count. So they are here to relay to Margot and Elliot that apparently Julia is on good terms with the Fairy Queen now, which of course both of them are not pleased to hear, because I mean, one can understand this from the outside really does just look like Julia going and like teaming up with another fucking horror show that they have had to deal with, like she did with the Beast. Like, this doesn't, they don't know the full circumstances. And once they hear it, maybe it sounds slightly better and more believable, but it doesn't really like completely restore their faith, you know? And I understand that. I mean, things went real bad last time. So, oh, I also want to mention, and this is not, you know, anything, but Margot's outfit in this particular episode, like, you know, she's always got wonderful outfits, but she has got this sort of pinky red, almost like a magenta, but like not really, not purpley enough, blousy silk on with a corset over it, but the like the chest and neckline are very like fluffy, and it is just like really different. A lot of times her clothes are kind of angular and done so as to be almost like haute couture looking, and while this still has that look, it's much softer than it has been before. I don't know if that's going to be a thing because, you know, I'm somebody who really does pay attention to the clothing choices and colors for the costume design in shows. And for some shows, that is done much more purposefully than it is for other shows. Like Breaking Bad, when I was covering that, I was really noticing color. And it turned out once people started listening and letting us know that I was very much on the right track, that the people who wrote that show and designed that show meant for color to be extremely important, and they were very aware of what they were doing. I don't know if this show is doing that or not. I have noticed at times that scenes in which Margot seems a little bit less powerful, she has a nude lip rather than the bold berry color or even almost like black that she wears sometimes. So I've started to sort of associate a scene where Margot seems to be wearing very little lip color with a scene where Margot is about to be like screwed with and not get agency. Again, I don't know if I'm like just kind of seeing what I want to see or if that's on purpose, but I would really be interested in like getting a chance to put the data together and find out whether or not that's true. It's also kind of a subjective thing too, you know? Jesse says, I wish you could follow the actors and costume designer on Instagram because it's so fun, but you'd be totally spoiled. Yeah. That's, the one drawback of covering shows the way that I do is that there's a lot of social media interaction that I miss out on. And that's one of the small pleasures of being able to just watch things on my own. There are certain shows that I've just decided are mine and I'm not going to cover them. And it is nice to be able to just like seek out whatever I want and find it and not have to worry about that. So this this scene, I should also mention, I was not super into Margot's line delivery in these scenes. I felt like she sounded like she was going to laugh at any second. And I mean, it's understandable. One of her lines is, fuck Tinker Bitch. Fuck her right in the Egg McMuffin. I mean, it probably is really hard to say that without laughing. But there is a feel to her when she says those lines that takes me out of the scene. It doesn't feel natural in the moment. It feels like a great line that Margot is lucky to get because it's fucking hilarious, but she didn't quite do with it what I wanted her to do. There are times where I feel like the actress who plays Margot is borrowing her like tone from other characters and other things that she is like sort of drawing inspiration from. And this is one of those moments where I'm like, that doesn't feel like she said it the way Margot says it. That feels like she's channeling a woman that's like 55 years old playing like, you know, Mame or something. But anyway, so they are really reticent in taking Julia's word for what's happening here. And they want to go and talk to her about what's happening. But there's the tree, the portal tree, that they use in order to get back. And it is being patrolled because obviously Tick is very hell-bent on catching them. So all of the kings and queens will be recognized because their images have been circulated. And there is absolutely no way that they are going to be able to get to the tree. Alice suggests that maybe one of them should be sent back rather than trying all of them. And Margot reminds her that they will know her face as well. And then Josh walks in and he's eating a sandwich and very excited, and then notices them all staring at him. And is like, oh, what's going on, guys? And they decide to send him back. Now, totally makes sense why all of the soldiers don't recognize Josh. I am, guys, and when I said at the beginning of this that there are parts of this episode that kind of confuse me. This is one of them. The portal tree. What's up with this portal tree? I don't feel like I remembered there being a specific tree in Fillory that they could, like, reliably get back to their own world from. Did I miss that? Because I thought that there had been a couple of different instances in which our friends did not know how to get back to their own world, that they, like, needed the button in order to do it, and not having the button was a problem. Did I miss this tree just being, like, a very reliable doorway at all times? That, like, it's apparently reliable enough that there are guards posted around it. I'm not feeling like this rings bells, and it's not like I don't pay attention when I watch this show. So I wonder about, like, when I have trouble piecing together things like this, even though I talk pretty in depth about episodes and watch them close together, much closer together than people who are following it when it's airing, I can't help but wonder if there were other people out there wondering the same things as me, like having the same issues, or are people just sort of like rolling with it? Is this like a Doctor Who thing? But that's what I call it when things are not really, like, they don't actually have a lot of grounding, but people are just like, well, you know, they're saying it, so I guess it's fine. Jesse says, I only remember the clock being the portal, and then I think they come out of the tree in Fillory, so maybe it works in reverse too, ? Now, see, this is what I mean. Jesse is not sure, ? at the end of that. Maybe it works in reverse too. I am willing to accept this if they take the time to establish it. But it feels like in this scene, they're treating it like it's established already. And it doesn't, like, it's not, as far as I'm concerned. There's just this sort of, like, taking for granted that the portal tree is a thing that I was just like, and this was part of why I rewatched the first episode, the first half of the episode, because by the time we, like, wind up in the 23rd timeline, I felt like there were several things that I had just been sort of meant to accept and not question. And I was, like, a little bit side-eye about that. There are times where I think that they're establishing something that I have to say, sort of take their word for it, and they will come back around. They'll circle back around and explain it. But this doesn't feel like they're going to come back around, and, like, the fact that Tick has posted guards around this tree, it just feels like they need a reason to send Josh instead of anybody else, and that's the only way that they could make it happen, you know? So I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of this being the, like, reasoning behind the way that they decide to do things. It's fine. I'm not, like, super mad about it, but it really, like, there is so much world building in this show. There is so much establishing of this and that can work and what the rules are and how we can't do this because of that, that when they decide to just drop something like this into your lap, it just feels like you guys have had a lot of time to decide what you want to be a thing and what not. I don't see any reason why we couldn't have had a little bit more time with this concept and you give it some room to breathe and make it seem more legit, you know? But anyway, pardon me, guys. My throat is, like, closing up for some reason. So we go to break bills. And I should mention that, guys, I didn't fully realize this when I was watching this the first time, that the last episode where there's the fairy rebellion and they slaughter all of the slavers in the fucking McAllister family, except for Irene, who I hate, they were on Break Bill's property for that whole thing. I didn't know that. I didn't realize that they were on Break Bill's property with these fairies having dinner in that hall. Because, like, once we, like, go into this room, it's clearly the same room that Julia is in with the dean. And there are multiple tables because apparently people were like, I guess this is sort of the equivalent of, like, the Hogwarts Hall but a little bit more, it's more Victorian, less medieval. But the camera is so focused in on that one table in the previous episode that I thought it was just a dining room. I didn't realize how big the room is. I didn't realize that they were at school. This begs the question for me, how, like, there is a fucking prison built in the basement. What is that about? Like, how much time have they had to get this all set up? Apparently it's enough. But anyway, so she's talking to Dean Fogg about everything that happened, tells him the McAllisters are dead except for Irene. He is like really shocked at hearing everything that happened and mentions something about how it smells really floral. And she says, try less rose water in your cleaning spell next time, which I found really funny. And this is so remarkable, guys. He says something about how Irene is going to want her property back, and Julia says, well, she'll have to find it first. And he gives her a look and says, did you poke out her eyes? Guys, why is he assuming that? Why is that the thing that he thinks that she's like, she'll have to find them first with no eyes? What an assumption to make, Dean. Dude. Like, as somebody who got your eyes poked out, basically, or ripped out, I feel like you should be a little bit less, like, giggly when you ask her if she did that. Holy shit. But yeah, she tells him that she replaced all the wards around Brakebills. And he's like, that's not possible for just you to do. And she's like, it is actually. Now it is. I don't know if it's because I helped all those fairies, but something has happened, and now I am able to do a lot. And she tells him the school's yours if you want it, so sober up. And he doesn't really respond to that. I guess we'll see if he wants it back. So this is when Josh turns up, and she explains to him about the fairy key being something that they cannot have. And Josh just reacts with, well, that blows. And then sort of stares at her and then is like, look, I'm sorry. I am not like sure how to handle this news. They just told me go talk to Julia. And I really kind of want to know again that we have talked about this portal tree, but Josh just turns up and we don't actually get to see it. So you guys, you see what I'm talking about? That this just feels like real weird and sort of like abrupt. I'm not trying to I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I kept waiting for there to be a moment where we see the tree and I'm like, oh, right. This is how this, and we just do not get that. They just really don't want the portal tree to be a thing that we focus on at all. Ashely says there was always a prison-like place at Brakebills. Quentin, Josh, and the guy that killed the bunny have been housed there. The guy that killed the bunny, he was put in this, like, it was like they were in individual cells. But this prison spot was like a big room. Maybe they just have lots of different ones, you know, for different groups. I don't know. But yeah, that's true, Ashely. I forgot about how that poor guy gets possessed and kills a bunny. It's so mean. What a rude dude. All right. So they're in the middle of talking, not sure what they're going to do next. And all of a sudden, the light, like, around them shifts. And all of a sudden, they are inside of a tent covered in what just looks like string lights, which is just so funny to me. And I said this last time, and I stand by it, that this is really funny. Josh asks, how did we wind up at Burning Man? Which, honestly, that does feel appropriate. And it turns out that they are on the inside of I think they call it a Teslaflexion. And this is essentially what happened to Alice when Quentin summoned her in order to talk to her, she was probably just like doing something else and suddenly found herself like in this tent. And it is a very abrupt, weird moment. So another version of Josh walks in and says, thank God it worked. And our Josh is not ready. Like, he didn't know this was even a thing, it seems like, because when she says it's a Tesla collection, he does not know what she's talking about. And then when he sees himself, he is really, really thrown. This version of Josh has not got glasses, and he has a dope jacket that he is very excited about, and that our Josh is very excited about as well. He has a bit more swagger. We find out that it's kind of not, I won't say that the swagger's not real, period, but it comes from a bad place. This is not swagger born of like genuine confidence. This is a defense mechanism for feeling like people do not have your back and they don't care about you. And it's a bummer to see how like Josh's concerns from a couple episodes ago that they were just not going to come for him, that they had forgotten about him, could have like very easily come true. Obviously, there is a reality in which nobody noticed that he was gone, that everybody was like leaving him behind to fend for himself and find his own way out. And that's a shitty feeling. And it makes me wonder, knowing that he is in the version of reality in which it's easier, like he has an easier relationship with everybody, and he can rely on the physical kids are the ones who saved him when he was in the Netherlands. The physical kids are the one who saved him from the demon. I want to know whether or not this is going to kind of make Josh feel better or worse. I feel like it's better. I feel like Josh is kind of realizing that if he lets himself get embittered by what could have happened or the way things started to go, that it could be really bad for him. But there's also the potential to be like, I mean, yeah, you guys wound up coming for me, but like, it was a close thing. And honestly, they came for him this most recent time, not because they noticed he was gone and were worried about him. They came for him because the key was there, and they just happened to run into the thing that he was like trapped in their efforts to get the key. I don't know if that is going to be something that he like realizes or cares about, but you know, it could go a couple different ways finding out this sort of information. So future Josh, or not future Josh, 23 Josh, he tells them that there is a monster here that is killing students that they call the Beast. And it's a really weird thing to realize that like that timeline is further along and they are still dealing with a problem that for us is like, 2 seasons old at this point. And it's, it makes sense because they are literally in the only timeline in which they defeated the Beast. So there's like any timeline that they pick at this moment, when they get there, the Beast is going to be an issue. But we wind up finding out that the Beast is not who we thought. They don't know how the Beast still has magic either, because magic has also been turned off in this timeline. And guys, so the timeline thing is a little hard for me to sort of wrap my brain around at times. I feel like I keep like the Dean Fogg that we have now in the timeline we are currently in, the Dean Fogg that was just talking to Julia, does that Dean Fogg remember what happened on all the other timelines? Is that something like that when they start a new timeline, he continually holds on to the memories of the previous timelines? Am I correct in thinking that? I think that's how it worked because of the way that he shares the news with Quentin about the fact that the timelines exist. Okay, Ashely says yes. Okay, so if we accept that as true, and granted, I understand that this is probably just a problem in the writing because they did not intend for this timeline thing for them to go into it like at the beginning of the season. But Jesse says, I remember him saying he knew he was in a time loop, but he's powerless to change it. Okay, I guess that's the thing, that he's powerless to change it. I'm not entirely sure what it means that he's powerless to change it. Like, he's just at the mercy of what the kids decide to do, I guess. Because he does tell Quentin about it. And he does tell Quentin, like, a little bit about, oh, in every other timeline, everybody died, or you died, or your friends died, or whatever. He does let him know some things. Jesse says, or maybe I mean powerless to control it. He does change things with each loop. Okay. So we're in a timeline, 23, where magic has also been shut off. Guys, if you were the dean and you knew there was a timeline in which magic gets shut off, would you not be obsessively making batteries? I would be absolutely dedicating all of my time to preparing for this moment. I would be teaching that as like a main course to the students. How to make magical batteries. Everybody, let's do this experiment today. And they would think that it was just a little fun project class thing. And I would be putting them into a room in the basement with the other 400 magical batteries that other students made. And I would just be so goddamn prepared. Like, it just, for me, the fact that magic is gone here, and maybe this is like the explanation that I would accept. Maybe magic isn't turned off in every timeline. And maybe by the time it's turned off in this timeline, the dean's dead. Maybe he doesn't know about it because he did. But, you know, this really like crossed my mind. I was like, what? So this isn't the only timeline that this happens in, and he seems taken completely aback by it? Like, how though? Because we have a very specific scene when magic gets turned off that opens with the dean talking to the students about getting used to magic not being around and continuing to study the theory anyway. Like, the fact that the dean didn't know this was going to happen and is kind of shook by it is how we start the whole there's no magic part of the story. And it just kind of distracted me. Like, it feels like that should have been something that he was really paranoid about. And maybe should have warned them that it could happen. But at the same time, there are a couple of explanations on why this dean, I just have a hard time believing that it got turned off in just the one timeline that he happened to be already dead in. So I don't know. Jesse says, I took it to mean each timeline is different, not like each timeline being identical like Groundhog Day. The timelines only diverge at the point that Jane reset them. I don't really know how that solves this problem. I'm not and I'm not trying to be argumentative. I don't really I'm trying to understand how that would because the vibe I'm getting is that magic being turned off, if it happens in this timeline, it could easily happen in either all the other ones, at least half the other ones. This doesn't feel like a totally unique problem like they thought it was. So I don't know, but if if y'all have some theories on that, or I don't know, if you just think I'm being too picky, that's fine. But it is just because losing magic is such an astronomical event, it is so earth shaking. And the fact that right now, the Julia that was just talking to that dean remembers that this happened at other times and it doesn't come up. He doesn't even mention to them now oh yeah, this happened in other timelines. I just really hoped that because things were going differently this time and you had actually defeated the beast, that it wouldn't happen this time. Like, even if he said something like that, I would be like, yeah, I could see thinking that like defeating the beast will solve that problem. But he never even mentions that he knows this is a possibility. So anyway, let's see. Jesse says he should have been prepared, but he's also a spiraling drunk. But he's getting drunk because magic is gone. Like, that's part of the reason that he started spiraling. So that wouldn't have come. That's not the reason he didn't keep track of what's going on. He should have been able to, like, you know what I'm saying? It's just, anyway, it doesn't really matter. It's just something that I kept being like, but wait, what? If they had not had magic be gone in 23, this whole thing would be a non-issue. But the fact that they decided to do that opens up a host of other questions and problems and plot holes for me. And, you know, that's just a thing. So, all right. He is telling them, like, basically that he asked for Julia, except that the Julia in my timeline, who was, by the way, the best student break bills ever had, was brutally murdered. And he says to the two of them, as they're running out of time, you have to find a way back here. This is our most desperate hour. Help us, Josh and Julia. You're our only hope. And then they immediately appear right back where they had been. So that's a fun moment. I liked Josh being like, God damn it, he used a Star Wars reference. We're his new hope. I can't handle this. She says something about not knowing if they can trust him. And he says, of course we can. He's me. I would know if I were lying. Now, we find out, truthfully, he's not lying. He is telling the truth when he says, you're our last hope, our only hope. But that's the thing, is like, Josh underestimates the differences in his personality and what he would be willing to resort to if he goes through different events. And honestly, I wonder how much, like I had said before about Josh being a little bit like wondering how he would react to the news that like people did genuinely forget about him in this timeline. But there's also the aspect of seeing the potential of what you could have been capable of if things had just gone a little differently in your life. And that's the thing I find really like haunting a little bit. We can wind up better versions of ourselves because of a lot of times sheer luck and the fact that there was somebody looking out for us, or we had a safety net of some kind. But if that is taken away, how many of us devolve in terms of our morality and our standards, you know, for behavior? And this is sort of like thing that I would love there to be a sort of simulator that shows a different reality for people. For those who do not have compassion about, for example, immigrants or the homeless or people who are struggling with getting out of abusive relationships. There are so many situations in life in which people are just like, well, I would have done this and that would have solved the problem. And I would love it if they went into a sort of simulation where their life didn't turn out the way that it did this time around, and they get to see how differently they really handle things versus the way they claim they'd handle things when sitting comfortably on the outside of the situation looking in. I have a feeling a lot of us wouldn't love the result. We wouldn't be super flattered at seeing the reality of what we're like when things don't go our way. You know, and that's not true of all of us. Many of us will still hold on to our compassion and will maybe make some bad choices, but it's obvious we're doing the best we can. But that's not necessarily going to be true of everybody. And I just think it would be a good lesson. But unfortunately, we don't have anything like that. That's not like just a video game. So he is talking to Julia about like the keys themselves and the way that they are finding them in a certain order, because it turns out that the beast is wearing a key around his neck in that universe. And they think in that timeline. And that is like the theory on where he's getting his magic from. And Josh is asking, like, do we need to be going to get the keys in the order that the keys, like, that we are told to? And Julia is like, well, that's how it's worked with the book. The book has told us where to go, and we go there and get the key, and then it tells us where the next one is. But he points out, maybe the thing is, we flip it this time. Maybe we're meant to get, like, another key before that key. And she says that, honestly, the quest is sort of Q's thing, and that she hasn't really been involved enough with it to, like, make a guess on how this is supposed to go. She says, I say we take this problem back to him, see what they say about it. So, they go and use the key on the clock in order to get back into Fillory. And when they step through, they are in 23. And they're just like, wait a second, what is happening here? So it turns out that whatever the powers that be are, they have decided that it is imperative they help Timeline 23. And Timeline 23 Josh is here, and then Marina comes out as well. Marina is not dead in this universe, and she finds it a little bit weird that Julia says at one point they used to be friends, and says in a line that I really enjoyed, that does not sound like me. Like, she knows herself. As soon as Marina shows up, of course, my instinct is like, okay, this is a bad situation that they just got themselves into. Like, whether you can trust Josh, or not. And I guess I should call our Josh, and the other one, other Josh. Whether you can trust other Josh or not, when you add Marina into the mix, there is going to be deceit happening. Like, there is no way that this is what it sounds like it's going to be. And really, what it turns out they need is to sort of just hand Julia over to the beast. And Josh is just the spare, as they put it. He's Cedric Diggory. And is just unfortunate enough to be caught up in the side. He gets caught up in it, even though he has nothing to really do with it, which is another moment of just it being a little insulting, honestly. How Josh is not really like a main character throughout a lot of this. So they drug Josh. He gets roofied. And before it kicks in, he has a conversation with himself where he asks about what had happened to this Josh and the fact that he got LASIK, and he calls him like the braver Josh. But this Josh is like, well, they forgot about me, so I came back determined not to need anybody. I'd be a lone wolf, get it? Brave, heroic, solo. Got LASIK, found this sweet jacket, and changed my fucking life. Guys, this next line. Is this like that time when we got that Kangol hat in middle school and thought everything was going to be different? Guys, I don't know if any of y'all have gone through that, but the thinking that I'm going to walk into school where they have known me for years, and just because I am wearing this thing or that thing, they will not like remember exactly who the fuck I am and will see me as a totally different, cooler person is a reality. That is definitely a thing that I have done. Now, low key, for me, it kind of worked because I think A, I'm a girl, and B, I wasn't like extroverted enough until like high school that anybody really had an opinion on my personality because nobody knew what it was. So the coming up and wearing different clothes and suddenly being a lot more fashionable coincided with me sort of becoming a lot more like open with who I am as a person. And I think that helped. But this is, I mean, I've seen it a million times. I'm sure we all have. So yeah, this is when he passes out, and they both, Julia and him, pass out, and they wake up tied up, and they get the explanation about, you know, the beast and all of the deal that they tried to make, and then they're arguing about how magic isn't real, and that, you know, Julia finally, because she had sort of like looked at Josh when he's about to out the fact that she can do magic and told him to save it. She here gets them out of their bonds and proves that she does still have magic, actually. And she touches Marina, and Marina had like this claw mark on the side of her face, and she heals Marina's face and also fixes her smoking addiction and her migraines. Guys, can I get a Julia real quick? That'd be super. I would love for somebody to just, I have some, you know, skin problem. Right now I've got like bruises because I got Botox for my facial twitch. So I've got little needle bruises on my face. But also, I have migraines. I suffer from migraines. It would be super if that could be just not a thing anymore. And I would also really like to, you know, maybe make a few changes here and there. Could she just do a little bit of like cosmetic shit? I'd be happy for that. So she is explaining to Marina exactly what happened between the two of them, because she didn't want to initially. She doesn't want to. She doesn't want to spill the beans, basically, that she fucked up and got Marina killed, because that's essentially what happened. And I mean, as much as I want to not like make Julia take responsibility for that, remembering how that scene went down, that's exactly how it happened. She was way too hesitant and she took too long, and Marina wound up getting caught up, you know? So, and Marina mentioned something about how she like slept with Dean Fogg as well, which I found really funny. Oh yeah, I forgot that the Dean Fogg in this timeline, we actually go and see him. So yeah, him like maybe being dead and not knowing magic gets turned off isn't a thing. He's 100% still alive here. So I totally forgot. My bad. So they talk about the Rhinoman Ultra, which is the spell that they used to defeat the beast last time. And spoiler alert, this time around, that does not do anything. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit to the conversation, because they have to go to the library in order to get this. And this is where they run into the ghosts of Margot and Elliot. And what has happened is that apparently the two of them tried to do this spell and they did it wrong. And so, like, it looks like Margot got killed outright and Elliot is injured and I think dies more slowly, but does eventually die of it, if I'm not mistaken, my interpretation of the way this is. But I really love the return to like Elliot being an alcoholic and being irritated that people are calling him a lush while he's drinking out of a flask in the middle of the library, and the way that Margot sort of like looks away from him and raises her eyebrows because it's fucking true, but she doesn't want to talk about this with her friend. And yeah, the fucking scene where he comes out of the shadows and is like essentially having a fucking panic attack and saying to himself, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I fucked up, I fucked up, I fucked up, I fucked up, oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. Guys, his acting is real good. Like, you just feel the fucking panic of it, you know? And like, he has something on his shirt and he pulls it off, and I believe it's Margot's ear with her earrings still attached, if I'm not mistaken. It's really like hard to watch him curl in on himself here. Oh, I hated it. And then, you know, he says something about where's my Bambi, and the light shifts and he's like grabbing at Marina. And as they back away, Margot walks into the screen and she just has a huge section of her fucking head missing. Yikes. Guys, it's really something to see how it can go wrong, you know, because we've been told it can, but it's never actually happened. I feel like I'm running out of so much time. I can't believe how little time I have left. They leave the library. They have the information that they need, but they leave the library and they run into fucking Penny, who, as it turns out, is like in a relationship with Julia in 23 and is extremely protective of her. He calls her his soulmate, and he like gets up in Josh's face a little bit about keeping Julia safe and is like, you know, if you let anything happen to her, I will fucking kill you. And I was like, wow, Penny, what's happening? This Penny is just way less angry and just a lot more intense and sort of focused in a way that I'm not used to seeing. And I find that really interesting. So yeah, this is just it's a weird situation overall. So Josh and his other version of himself are talking, and he says something about like, you know, you aren't actually the braver Josh. You have been kind of like shitty with the way that you have handled things and the attitude that you have decided to take in this whole thing. And 23 takes off his jacket and hands him the jacket and says, "Don't call me Dick Josh again." And Josh puts it on. And this leads to a bit of confusion when the Beast turns up, because he sees the Josh that does not have the jacket on and kills that one because he thinks that that is the extra Josh, I guess. And we don't see that this is Quentin. We see that this is the moth-faced Beast, right? But when it clears up and we see that it is Quentin, that was a lovely moment. I really enjoyed the reveal there. I thought that was really well done. It didn't feel like cheap. I just really, really liked the way that, and it's because Julia shoots the Rhinoman Ultra at him and it just like kills the moths, but it doesn't do anything to Quentin himself. It just like, he turns around and his face is his face. And he's got this like odd blue light to his eyes as he turns. Guys, can I confess something here? Beast Quentin can get it. Okay? Like, I have really disliked self-pitying Quentin and obsessed with Alice Quentin. Quentin, without that baggage, and granted, he has no shade and he's just a bad person here. He's a murderer. But let's set that aside. First of all, he knows how to wear that fucking suit, ladies and gentlemen. So let's just talk about that. And also, he just stands in this certain way that feels like there is a self-assuredness to it. I am a fan. Just saying. It's a bit of a shame how things go down, and that, you know, we couldn't somehow incorporate an element or two of this Quentin into present Quentin. Because, like, I want him to retain his compassion and his, like, thinking things through and the consequences and having a shade and all that. But, like, can he have a little bit of, like, badassery? Just a tiny bit, please? That'd be cool. Anyway, Julia manages to grab Penny's hand, which gives him the magic to transport them all out of there. And they have to process the fact that Quentin is the Beast and what exactly happened here. I love the fact that fucking like Marina just does not know who Quentin even is. The whole conversation of all of this is taking place in the library, by the way. But I really enjoyed this whole confusing conversation. So they go and talk to Alice finally. And she talks about the fact that the Beast destroyed Quentin and it destroyed his shade. And she wanted him back so bad that she basically does exactly what Quentin did in our timeline for her, which is she went and like made a deal in order to try and like get him a body back and get him a second chance, but he came back without his shade. And she has traded her time after death for this opportunity. When I die, I won't go to the underworld. I am going to belong to him. Whatever this creature is, which we didn't actually meet. She just calls it the creature in the northern marsh who can give you what you want for a price. I don't know if this is a fairy, but maybe we'll find out. Maybe we won't. But yeah, when I die, I won't go to the underworld. So yeah, she wound up sort of making this version of Quentin. And she is very apologetic because she feels, I just wanted to see him again. But understandably, Marina is like, you fucking created this thing. All of our friends dying is on you. And Julia says, well, because of what I did, Quentin and I used the Teslaflexion to talk to her. So if we hadn't, Alice never would have tried to bring Quentin back. We basically gave her the idea. So that's true as well. So then they finally like decide that they are going to confront the Beast and they are going to use Alice to talk to him because Alice is she is weirdly convinced that he won't hurt her, or even if he will, she seems to be willing to take responsibility for what she did and that he will, she is the one who is responsible for him existing and maybe she just deserves to die. So yeah, this confrontation is pretty good. They wind up going to Fillory, where this version of the Beast is sitting on the throne. I wonder if he also cursed all of the thrones. And it takes a little bit of convincing for Julia to use Alice as bait because she did it with Marina and that fucking went real wrong. But there's really not an alternative here. So, I'm trying to find the spot. Okay, so they are sort of on in the hallways of Fillory, or of the castle in Fillory, and there are all of these like bits and relics of things from the stories that apparently Quentin has been gathering and hoarding, which is interesting. And he's like sitting on his throne with the little tray on his lap, like just eating a roast something, probably rabbit, all alone. And it is really kind of funny to see him having this sort of like single dad rotisserie chicken that you pick up from Walmart moment as the Beast. But he spots them. And again, guys, he really knows how to wear that fucking suit. I'm telling you. They send Alice in there. He winds up killing Alice with very little ceremony, honestly. It's pretty rough. I was startled at how quickly it happened. He just cuts her in the stomach, and like it doesn't even look like that deep a cut. But clearly it's gonna be enough. Like he's done this enough times. That's essentially the move that he pulled on other Josh. And Julia pops out and manages to sneak up on him and puts her shade into Quentin so that he suddenly feels the gravity of everything that he has done. And it is a really great piece of acting. I feel like I haven't given this actor enough credit because I've only seen him play the Quentin that I know, who is really frustrating and irritating and self-centered a lot of the time. But getting to see him play the Beast version of himself, where he has this sort of like confidence, but also like a deep sadness that's very different than the sadness we're used to. And then seeing him play returning to himself, I feel like I have a newfound admiration of his abilities. Like, this was really, really excellently done. He gets to do something here that's much more dynamic than what he's been in the past. And I'm impressed. So she asks Hugh about where he found the key as he's like freaking out that he just killed Alice. And he said, I heard that it could bring back magic and I couldn't have that. So I got it first. And she says, I know why you were looking for me. The key showed you visions of the future and it showed me killing you. And he sort of is like arguing with her. She puts down the knife that they have that is meant to be able to, like, you know, kill him. And she says, I don't want to kill you. I want to help you. And he says, the visions weren't of you killing me. I saw you opening a lock at the end of the world. And you were trying to let magic back in. But you let in something way, way worse. And she says, what? And he says, a monster, one even worse than me. You should take your shade back. And he takes the knife and with like no ceremony whatsoever, just plunges it into his fucking heart. Like, it's so sudden, guys. It's so sudden. And she takes her shade back. She, you know, manages to get it in time, but damn, like the quickness with which everybody in this episode dies is very, very startling. And Julia picks up the key. She yanks it off of his neck. I don't know if she's like seeing visions of the future when she picks it up, but it doesn't seem like it. Meanwhile, Josh is trying to find a way to open a door to like come back to their own timeline and just waving the key around, trying to like find a door for it to open. It is really funny. And he's talking to Marina and she asks, like, isn't there a ritual for that or something? He's like, no, that would be nice, wouldn't it? But no. And Penny comes up to Julia, asks if the key showed you anything. She shakes her head and says nothing, but I'm not totally sure I believe her. I don't know. And he tells her, your Penny's dead or not alive in some confusing way. And it seems like he's sort of assuming that her and Penny like are together, and she has to be like, look, you can, I get, and he's like, I'm not asking permission, by the way, but she's like, I don't like if you come back, it's not going to be you just getting back your Julia. That's not how this is going to work. And he's like, okay, that's fair, but I don't have anything left here. So I am fine with leaving. There's nothing left. And I was like, okay, this is a neat thing. So we've got a Penny in the Underworld whose story we might actually get to follow. And then we've got live Penny from another dimension with a different personality in a lot of ways coming back, which is pretty dope. I am not a huge fan of like, oh, character's dead, but not really. We brought them back usually. But this is an interesting way to do it. This is a very like, you know, I like it. I think this is cool. And apparently when that door appears that they can go through, it's not just Penny that comes with them. Marina like goes sprinting through it. And guys, I would like to register my deep approval because Marina is a fun ass character and I am here for her being alive again. Really, really glad. Like, I'm just super, super excited to see what the fuck she's going to be up to because she is she's a disaster. Like, her and Poppy. What's Poppy's reaction to Marina going to be? Because the two of them have a vibe that's sort of similar, weirdly. So anyway, I'm over time and I got to wrap this, but thank you guys very, very much for commissioning this episode and for hanging out with me. Despite my many like issues with some of the things in the beginning of this episode, I actually really liked where we wound up here and I found it really interesting. And yeah, I'm just super excited to see what happens next. So, all right, everybody. Thank you again so much for listening. And I will see you again soon with a new episode. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
was an Unspoiled Network podcast.